All right, so today I want to kind of start off this series of what if scenarios with NBA draft and college basketball stuff. And the first one that I wanted to get your guys' opinions on is thinking about this 2026 class and how we're already so high on the top 5, 6, 7, even 8 prospects, that could be coming out of this draft potentially. And then you think about last year with Cooper Flagg, he reclassified to get into this 2025 draft class. So if he didn't do that, Cooper Flagg theoretically would have also been in this 2026 class, which would have made it just maybe the most stacked potential draft, maybe of all time, with how good Cooper Flagg was last time and how good some of these prospects already are showing in 2026. So I just want to get your guys' thoughts on where you think Cooper Flagg would end up. Would he still be the number 1 pick in this year's NBA draft?
That's tough because, I think we've seen with these 3 guys already just how kind of tossed everybody is. But I think Flagg, he would have made an interesting addition to this prospect class, just because I feel like he's kind of different from, and I'm kind of trying to remember the storylines about him coming in the last season, but I feel like he's very different from the 3 of them, because AJ's kind of like that wing scorer, downhill driver, can do a little bit of everything offensively, also has the defensive upside. Darren is like, people just compare him to Kobe, he's really polished, stuff like that. And then Cameron, really efficient big man, but Cooper's kind of like this athletic, defensive-minded player who also has offensive tools as well. And I feel like he was kind of offensively, he had a really good season last year, but I feel like coming into it, a lot of people weren't fully sold on it. So I'm trying to do this from a fair perspective, but if this was the preseason kind of perception, I feel like it would be, this is hard to say, but I feel like he probably would be outside of that top 2. Or I don't want to say outside of that top 2, but I feel like for me it would go Peterson, DeBonsa, and then probably Flagg. But I also feel, and then I'll let you go, Cameron, but I also feel kind of stupid doing this too, because it's he had a full year to kind of negate all of those kind of concerns that people had about him, and he showed that, obviously now in the NBA he's having his struggles, but I don't fully think that's really his fault. It's just kind of the situation that he's in. But I think he kind of showed just how complete of a player he was also. He had probably one of the more insane freshman campaigns from recent prospects that we've seen.
Yeah, for me, I know coming in, there were questions about his shooting and his ceiling. Like you said, though, his freshman campaign really kind of ironed a lot of those things out. I don't know if it would be quite the same, just because he had to share the ball a lot with the talent he had on last year's roster. I feel like this year's roster, to maybe some extent, he might not have had to share it as much. Now that I think about it, I think last year's roster might have been just a touch more talented. It would be interesting seeing him and Cam work. I would be an interesting fit. I think it would kind of suppress them both a little. It could either both suppress them both a little bit, or it could boost them up because the team is so good they're not losing it all. And I think it would probably free the defense of stuff that you would see from Cooper would be even more insane than it was last year. It's hard because it's there's so many different factors that could adjust it. I would say if you say that he's gonna have the exact same freshman year he had last year, I think then for me, I think if you would have asked me this question at the beginning of last year, when he was the number 1 player in the high school class, I think I still liked AJ and Darren probably a little bit more. I think after seeing what he did his freshman year, I think it's almost a toss-up for me. I think it would just be entirely team dependent of who's there, how secure is that GM's job. Because I think if the GM is if he's in good standing, I think Cooper Flagg is probably maybe not as enticing as an AJ DeBanster would be, just because the ceiling could be so high. When you look at guys like him and Darren, I think if you're a GM that is on the way out the door, has might get fired, a Nico Harrison or somebody, I think you take Cooper Flagg and you are in a really safe spot. And I think you also get a really good amount of upside. He's probably, I think he might end up going number one just because he's the best. He might be the best blend of upside and like the really high floor. I think personally, I would have him third, but it would be so narrow. Really depend on what team I have.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear you guys talk about it, because the fact that if he was in this 2026 class, the fact that it's even a toss-up between him and Darren Peterson or him and AJ DeBonsa, it's really interesting because you think back to last year, the top of that class was really good. You still had Dylan Harper, you still had Ace Bailey, but throughout pretty much from day one up until the NBA draft, it was like locked in that Cooper Flagg was the number one pick. But just a year later, we're talking about him potentially being the second or even third pick in this 2026 class. So I guess we'll go back to you, Branden, because you had maybe Darren and AJ above him. How big of a difference do you see between Darren and AJ as prospects versus what we saw last year as Cooper?
Wait,
like what separates them in your brain that makes it more questionable if Cooper would go number one?
Well, for me, I feel like it's just the offensive game. And like, I know I already talked about that, but, and like Cooper, don't get it wrong. Like, I feel like he has a really high offensive upside as well. And like, especially when he showed off a lot of like the shooting improvement and the passing as well. But for me, I just feel like what they kind of have stuff that I feel like could put them on another level offensively. Cause like AJ, he's 6'9", he gets downhill, like I kind of already talked about. And I think he hasn't really showed off. Like we saw a little bit of it in that UConn game, but I feel like he hasn't really had to show like his full shot making toolkit yet, if that makes sense. And I feel like some of the stuff he has there is just really good. But at the same time, and I'm thinking through some of this out loud, I'm sorry, but it's like I do kind of also see where Cooper could kind of narrow that gap, because he really is kind of just a jack of all trades. So now that I'm saying it does feel kind of tough to have them. I don't want to make it sound like they're so clearly above him, but it is kind of like, I don't know. I feel like the offensive upside that they have. And for me, I'm just a guy, like, defense is obviously important, but like, if I'm trying to go find a star, like, I want to see what you have offensively and like what's there. And, you know, and I like Darren to me is like the perfect offensive prospect in a lot of ways. And I know that's might be crazy to say because we haven't seen him play like 4 full games at the college level yet, but I just think with Cooper, it's like he can do a lot of things, but I don't know if he's someone who's like as polished offensively as they are, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that kind of goes like both ways though, because like while Darren and AJ have like that other gear they can kind of get to on offense, like the really special, like this is clear, so clearly like this could end up being like an option one, like if everything breaks right. I think Cooper kind of has like some more maybe like solid go-to things on the offensive end. Like that spin move that he had last year and his like ability to get to his spots. I feel like while it was predictably so that it might cause him to struggle a little bit at the next level, I think like at least having something to build on, like kind of gives him like, it's kind of the floor thing. Like it puts his floor that high. With AJ and Darren, they both at times, like while they have that extra gear to go to, like if they need a bucket, I don't know exactly what they're going to. In some ways that makes you more dangerous. In some ways that kind of makes you a little bit less dangerous because you don't have like that one thing that you can always go to. So I don't know. To me, it would really be like a 1A, 1B, 1C. Like it would be so team dependent. To me, like they're all in the same tier. Any given day, I think I would change my mind on who I would take. Which is crazy to say because Cooper really had like a really special freshman year. I just think that says a lot about what we're expecting out of AJ DeBansta and Darren Peterson going forward this year.
It would help if Darren Peterson played. But
yeah, I was going to say, I mean, you talked about him being the perfect prospect. Pretty much the only thing in these first couple of games that hasn't been perfect is that hamstring, which has kept him out. So it's totally fair to say, from what we've seen, Darren has basically been a perfect offensive player.
Yeah, and I want to also highlight like that UNC game that he had, the Louisville exhibition. I mean, I know those don't really say a whole lot, but it's like That North Carolina game, and I know we kind of talked about it, and I went and watched some of the stuff after, but it really was like he was kind of just in hell that game. I mean, but like he didn't make it look like it, you know? Like and I think I'll give credit to Bill Self because he still put him in like positions to where he could be dangerous, but it felt like every time he had the ball, he kind of knew what to do with it and kind of how to just put it in the hoop, you know? And I think that's kind of why, and like, again, I still want to see more from him, but I feel like he's just kind of a natural scorer who like doesn't get rattled. He can kind of counteract whatever you throw at him, it feels like at this point. And to Cameron's point, I do think it is kind of important to bring up that like Cooper has a go-to move he can go to, but I think also it shouldn't really be, and this isn't a shot, but I don't feel like it should really be an indictment against them if, you know, they don't really have a go-to move, because a guy like Darren, and I won't say AJ, but because AJ definitely could, but I think Darren specifically, it's like he's also kind of in a situation like with college and high school where like he hasn't really struggled yet. So I don't think he's really been in a position where he's like, okay, I need to really figure out what works, what doesn't. And I really think that once he gets to the NBA, then we'll kind of see more of like, I think somebody said it about Wemby too, and like obviously different positions, but it's like once you get to the league and then you know kind of like what works night in, what doesn't, then I think we'll kind of see that development of, you know, that go-to signature move, that hardened step back, that fade away, whatever it be for Darren Peterson.
Yeah, I wasn't saying it necessarily is like a knock against those two. I just think it's like a juxtaposition in a way. Like it can be good and it can be bad, like at the same time. Like because I think like their offensive ceiling is clearly higher. Like even if you just look at what they did in high school, like I don't know if Cooper ever had a game quite like that Darren Peterson like almost 60-point game he had against the Banster, or like the Banster had multiple 40 and 50-point games. Like we've seen these guys like turn on like a different level of scoring that I don't know if Cooper has. However, I've also seen Cooper access a level of defense that neither one of them has shown to this like point. So I mean, it would be really fascinating. It would make an already really good class like truly special. It's because like the guys like outside of the guys we're even talking about, there's legit guys from 6 to like 8 to 9. Like they seem to be really working out, and I'm just excited to cover the rest of this class.
I've kind of, and I'll just say this briefly, but I kind of feel like initially it was kind of those top three. And like I still think that they're on their kind of tier of their own at the moment, but I feel like also once you get down to 4, 5, and 6, it feels like you could just land another player who maybe he doesn't have an insanely high floor, but also just has really high upside. So this class is insane.